Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Joining me today on Better Than I Found It is former Cal golfer and current PGA Tour player Mikkel Kim. Mikkel and I talked as he was preparing for this week's Sony Open in Hawaii, and he and I discussed his junior career and also some very special golf he and his Cal teammates played during the 2012-2013 season. That year, Mikkel certainly did his part and was awarded the Jack Nicklaus Award and the Fred Haskins Award, both emblematic of the College Player of the Year. Mikkel's pro career, like so many, has seen highs and lows. His lone win coming on tour in an 8-stroke victory in the 2018 John Deere Classic. Mikkel describes some dark times also, 2019 through 2021, where he struggled, but also how he was able to persevere and come through it. He's really a nice guy with a terrific attitude for competitive golf. I hope you'll like this. All right, Better Than I Found It listeners, it's time to welcome former Cal golfer and current PGA Tour player Mikkel Kim to the podcast. Mikkel, appreciate you joining me on Better Than I Found It today.
Appreciate having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, I've followed you for years on Twitter, now X, and I've always enjoyed your social media posts. You're a funny guy. Have you always been that way, or is that just something you're throwing out there for social media?
I appreciate it. I don't think I'm like a comedian at all, or even that funny in a social aspect. But I try to be witty at times on there, and also try to help out other golfers out there. And over the years of my professional and college career, I've picked up a bunch of stories I've heard and personally dealt with throughout the years, and felt like it was a good some things I could share on Twitter and kind of help grow my brand and help others as well.
Well, I think your brand is it's a positive, uplifting brand, if you will, because whenever I read your posts, they're a lot of fun to read, and they're very helpful as well. A lot of amateur golfers I know maybe some professional golfers have benefited from your perspectives on the game of golf. So I appreciate that, and I've enjoyed following you. I'm catching you in sort of a downtime because you're in between seasons. I know you're in California awaiting a flight to go to the Sony in Hawaii in a few days. But you played 30 events last year. You are a journeyman, man. You play a lot of golf. You must love to compete.
I generally play a pretty big schedule. I think I've basically played 30 every year, other than that COVID year where it got kind of cut in the middle for a few months there. But yeah, I like playing a pretty big schedule. I have a stats guy that kind of looks at everything, including I tend to play my best golf on the third and fourth week instead of the first and second week. So I keep that in mind whenever I play. And with only 125 tour cards out there, it's you got to rack up the points as much as you can.
Well, we might look at your stats from this past year. You sort of started off pretty well for 2 or 3 tournaments, and then had some missed cuts in there and kind of mixed bag throughout the year. But you finished really well with your last 4 events. You had 3 top 12 finishes. I know that kind of secured things for you. But what were the highlights from this past year in 2024?
I think, like you said, I got off to a really good start. I finished top 5 at the Amex, I think. And I played really well at Torrey Pines, where I really grew my dreams of becoming a PGA Tour player growing up in San Diego. And those are definite highlights. And also, when you need to play well to keep your job, that's a different kind of pressure than trying to win a tournament. And to be able to play well coming down the stretch when I really needed to secure that top 125 was definitely highlights. And hopefully I can continue that momentum going for into Sony this upcoming season.
Well, 2 things stand out right there. A lot of professions you can be kind of average and still kind of coast and get by. You can't do that in pro golf, especially nowadays. So, but you mentioned San Diego. San Diego for the last 75 years has produced as many good junior players, college players, professionals as maybe any city in the country. It's kind of astounding, actually. And I don't know uh, if you were inspired by any of those guys, or if that was somewhat of it too long ago. Were there any San Diego golfers that inspired you? Phil Mickelson might have been one.
Yeah, Phil was definitely one. When I was growing up playing high school golf, um, guy named Jamie Lovemark, who
Oh yeah,
I'm sure we're well aware of. I mean, I wish people knew how good he was in high school, college growing up. He almost won a tour event, either as an am or he had just turned pro. You know, him and Ricky Fowler were studs. He went to the same high school that I went to, Torrey Pines High School. So, you know, it seemed like every few generations there was always a guy from San Diego that was going to play on tour, was really good. And so, you know, Southern California itself is just the is has great weather and just produces a lot of talent, I guess. And you always have someone really good to compete against in that Southern California region, and I was certainly a benefactor of that.
yeah. You mentioned Jamie. He was on the Palmer Cup team in 2007 when I coached the Palmer Cup team. And what I always remember about Jamie was his athleticism. The guy
Oh
could
my
throw
God.
a football through a wall. He was big. He was strong. He was athletic. He was in great shape. My God, he would inspire anybody, I would think.
He's super tall. He's got massive hands, you know, big frame. You know, he was kind of he's at a certain point he was bigger than, you know, maybe like even guys like Brooks Koepka was. And you know, he dealt with some injuries and he's still playing, but yeah, you know, you see it, you know, you see other high school golfers and they kind of look similarly outside, especially when I was growing up, but Jamie was kind of a different breed at that point for sure.
Definitely. Another great San Diego product was Billy Casper, and Billy was not necessarily in great shape. He did go on a diet, ate only buffalo meat for about a year, and lost a bunch of weight. But he won 51 golf tournaments when Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and Gary Player were the top three players in the game. During that exact same stretch, he won 51 golf tournaments, three majors. In fact, he beat another San Diego player, Gene Littler, in a playoff for the Masters in 1970. I know that's way before your time, but I mean, going back to my childhood and before, San Diego golfers have always done well and produced on the international and national stage.
Yeah, I remember I actually think I won, you know, San Diego junior golf tournaments. They're named after fellow
Mhm.
San Diego golfers. So I won a bunch of like Craig Stadler tournaments, Phil Mickelson tournaments, Billy Casper tournaments, and Scott Simpson tournaments.
Yeah,
I remember playing all of those for sure.
yeah. I remember we were playing the Southern Highlands Collegiate in 2013. I know you guys were there. You guys won, in fact. But Billy was there signing his book called The Big Three and Me. I've got a copy of it in my library still. But so you came from San Diego, but you weren't born there. You were born in Seoul, South Korea. You were raised in San Diego. How in the world did you get to San Diego? And let's talk about your junior golf career, the biggest influences, all of that.
Yeah, you know, my parents, my dad especially, wanted my brother and I to kind of have an education in the States. So when I was 7, our family immigrated over to the San Diego area, um, and you know, no one knew what golf really was, especially back then, especially in Korea. Now it's, you know, more popular than ever, but it wasn't as popular back then, and I think my dad just wanted to um, start something as a family, a kind of an activity, and kind of found golf kind of amusing at the time, and so we all started together. And I don't know the exact reason why, but like after, you know, picking up the club maybe 5 months ago, 5 months, they signed me up for a junior tournament for like the 8 and under division, and I finished like dead last by like 10 shots. And I thought these guys were all pro golfers. They were so good. Um, and that kind of started the journey for me. And then I was competitive and I wanted to get better. I wanted to beat those guys, and playing those tournament rounds and trying to beat your friends and competitors is kind of how really it all led to here. I just yeah started yeah, just started at San Diego and just kept coming up.
Well, you obviously had a great junior career. Did you went to Torrey Pines High School, and I've recruited some kids out of Torrey Pines High School. Never gotten any, but recruited there. How did Steve Desimone at Cal get you to come to Berkeley? How did that all come about? Everybody's
Yeah,
recruiting situation is a little different.
yeah. So as I was as I was kind of making up my junior ranks, I was a bit of a late bloomer. I started playing well my junior summer and into my senior year of high school, but my high school class of 2011, we there was
Hmm.
yeah, I'm biased, but I think it was an
It's
amazing
the
class.
greatest. It's the
It's an
greatest ever.
amazing
There's never
class
been one like it.
with Jordan Spieth, Justin Thomas, Patrick Rogers, kid named CT Pan. Xander Schauffele wasn't even that good back then. He was left to the side almost, and I actually grew up playing a lot of golf with since we were like 8 or 9 years old. But so when you're a late bloomer with such a competitive class, you're not recruited as much, and by the time that I felt like I was good enough to play really high level college golf, a lot of the rosters had been filled up with their commitments, and Coach Des was one of the coaches that were really interested. Even after he had recruited a couple other guys from my class and felt like it was a good kind of match. I took one visit up to Cal, and I always knew I wanted to. I felt like I wanted to stay in California at the time, and Cal was a great match with athletics and academics, and it ended up working out amazingly for me.
Yeah, it really was a great experience for you. Now, I'm going to throw this out there because my former assistant coach at Baylor, Ryan Blagg, he was working for Greg Priest here at Baylor before I got here. And did they either get you on a visit or try to talk you into a visit?
Yeah, so I definitely went on a visit to Waco. He pushed hard for what a college coach can, and he's like, you need to come, you need to come, and like I said, like a lot of the rosters had filled up, and there weren't a ton of college coaches recruiting me. So I was definitely interested. I went to Waco, had an amazing time for about 2 days. And I came back, and it um, came down to Cal, USC, and Baylor of which schools I wanted to go to. But in the end, I just wanted to stay in California a bit closer to home was kind of an important factor for me. So I chose Cal over Baylor, but I certainly went on a trip and loved it.
Well, good. I'm glad Ryan always told me that. He told me that a year when I got here, about a year and a half into your career. And I thought, what, gosh, you guys could have just gotten that. We'd have been pretty special. But, I've recruited in California throughout my career, and I've always been in at Oklahoma State or Baylor, or I was 1 year in Alabama. It's hard to recruit in California. You get a kid to come out. USC, Cal, and Baylor. That's two normal California schools, and then Baylor. I guess Coach Priest was doing a good job trying to recruit you.
Yeah, yeah, and Ryan, like I said, Ryan was really pushing hard. He gave an unbelievable offer to me at that time, and I wish maybe in a different time we I could have gone and seen what happened.
Well, Ryan always had a lot of good things to say about you, and I just wanted to make sure I had that story correct. That he wasn't embellishing at all. He did. He told me the truth. Um, I've always had a lot of respect for your college coach, Steve Desimone. I just really appreciated everything he did in the game with the college game. I always loved, but I always and I needed to get him on my podcast and didn't do it. But um, I just want to know what were the qualities about Coach Desmond that really made him really a quality golf coach?
Um, couple different things. One is he was all about competing. We rarely ever had practices. You have a set number of hours, of course you're aware, in a week and a month that you're allowed, and we spent all those as workouts or qualifying rounds. He was a huge believer in competing amongst ourselves in qualifying rounds. He never pre-selected lineups. It was all based on, however many qualifying that rounds we got. And the top five in those rounds were the ones that went to the tournament. My sophomore year, we had an amazing team, but there was a couple tournaments where he left out one of our quote unquote main starters of that week because he wasn't playing as well, and another freshman that came in was playing really well, and he didn't really care. He just like, hey, you guys go compete. I will take the top five, and those were it. And you know, just to like as a quick note, like the men's golf coach job at Cal is pretty different than most other coaching jobs because the Cal golf team is really all fully self-funded. So as much of a coach, he's also had to be a bit of a businessman and raise all this money, which he was absolutely incredible at. And I really don't know if there could have been any other golf coach that ran the program as well as he did at Cal.
Yeah, he was a professional that way. And nowadays, really, the college golf world, it's become such an arms race. You almost have to be able to raise some money to fund your program. Obviously, if you have a good product you're putting out there with great finishes and everything. But so I definitely saw that he was that, and I definitely saw the competitive side of him. But he also looked like he was having a good time when we were on the road. And maybe it's because you guys were leading most of those tournaments, but he definitely looked like he had a good time coaching.
No, he was great. He was great on the road. He has this incredible mind for being able to remember every little detail of every little moment in his life. And he he had been coaching for, I want to say 33, 32 seasons at that point. So, and we'd ask him about Peter Tomasulo or James Hahn, and he'd tell us so many interesting and funny stories. And back down to James or Peter had an 8 iron at 160 yards on the 16th hole at Southern Highlands or whatever, and was amazing. Was an amazing storyteller, and he was a joy to be around for sure.
Yeah, he was great. I have a story about Steve. We were in 2004, the year they won the national championship with, at the homestead. The problem with the homestead was the hotel is where you were staying. The driving range was at the hotel, but the golf course you played was about 20-minute drive in a van away. So you had to time all that out and get everything right. But so we were over there playing. Cal had played. It was the third round. They had played in the morning. We were playing in the afternoon. So we went over there, and I'm out following the tournament. And one of our players, Zach Robinson, his 3-wood flew off came off during the round. And Coach Holder told me, he said, Coach, you need to hop on the van and go back and get his backup at the hotel. So I hop on the van, and the whole Cal team jumped in. And they had played a great round that morning, really great. And I remember talking to Peter Tomasulo, and he said, he was talking about the round. And I said, you guys are going to win tomorrow. Now, we were way out of it, so we had no chance. And I remember him just looking at me like, maybe so. And sure enough, they won the next day, and that was classic history. But that's one of my memories of that. I was the assistant coach at the time, and I was going back to retrieve a golf club like a good assistant coach would, and they won the next day. So go Bears. All right, so let's talk about that 2012-2013 season. In the modern era, there haven't been many seasons better. Obviously, the big glaring omission was not winning the national championship, which is really, really hard to do. But I'm going to go through the season real quick, and then I I don't know, memories that are etched indelibly upon your brain that you think of that season? You won the Gopher Invitational. You won the Ping Golf Week Preview. You won the Alistair McKenzie. You won the Isleworth. You were third in the Arizona Collegiate. You won the John Burns, first in Fresno. Southern Highlands in Las Vegas, you won that one. Thunderbird, runner-up. Western Intercollegiate, you won. And the Pac-12 championships, you won. You won the regional, and you got to the national championship. That's an unbelievable season, completely dominating, by far the number one team. Talk about it. What are your great memories from that season? One of the greatest in college history.
Lots of great memories. I think we ended up winning 11 out of 14. And actually, one of those or two of those, we weren't even, Michael Weaver missed one of those Arizona tournaments because he was playing the Masters because he finished runner up at the USAM. Yeah, lots of great memories. I remember, interestingly enough, I remember having a more fun time my freshman year because we were underdogs and we were scratching and clawing and we were really, really young. And we won a lot that my freshman year, and kind of leading up, we knew we knew we were going to have a really good squad. Yeah, we had 3 first teamers, 2 second teamers as our top 5, which is obviously an amazing team. Some of the highlights was Isleworth is one of those big college tournaments to end the year. That was my first individual win. I played with Jordan Spieth, and Texas was obviously a great team at the time. They had just won nationals the year before. Southern Highlands winning was a really key one for us because I think we lost by 1 the year before, and in college, especially in our schedule, we played certain really big events that we really wanted to win, and those were the Southern Highlands, the Isleworths, and we knew we had an amazing team. We basically cruised the entire year, and we even won the stroke play at nationals. And then, gosh, the NCAA is just it's tough. That golf course is really tough. I every time I think about it, it hurts always because I ended up losing both my matches in the match play, and I had one player of the year, and I felt like I did a really poor job of, helping out the team that week. And, we lost to a really good Illinois team with Thomas Detry, Thomas Peters, Brian Campbell,
Charlie Danielson.
Charlie Danielson. And yeah, that one hurts. I felt like if we had won that one, it could really kind of puff our chest out and claim that we were really, one of the best teams in college ever. But that one hurt a little bit for sure at the end of it.
Well, you say it hurt, and here it is so many years later. It's 11 and a half years later. I think that those things never quite. Ben Hogan talked about Cherry Hills in 1960 when he was 48, and he spun a wedge off the green on 17 and made a bogey there, and then hooked it in the water on 18 to make a triple. He calls that he dreamed about it every night. It was a nightmare the rest of his life. So I don't want it to be that dramatic, but you guys did have a special season going, like one of the great. It was Tiger 2000 almost. It was so similar. You just won everything, dominated, and Alabama was in the middle of an incredible stretch with that great team they had, and they ended up winning the national championship that year at Crabapple. But I think a lot of people that aren't in the arena, that are not competing, can't really understand why something that would stick in your craw this many years later.
Yeah, you can, with any experience, it's all about how you take it in, right? So the way I've kind of, in a way, spun it is I actually, Brandon Hagee and Max and I, we're all 5 of us had the U.S. Open sectional qualifying the Monday right after the match play. So we had actually I was doing it in Georgia where Crabapple was nearby. And I actually even did a practice round a few days before the NCAAs, just to, because once the tournament starts, obviously you're super busy with that. And I ended up qualifying for the US Open at Marion at that site. And I feel like we all had the mentality of like, we didn't win nationals. So I'm at the very least, I want to make this trip worth something more than just that. And if we had won nationals, our team, especially me, I don't know if I would have been as motivated heading into that tournament, just off the high of winning the week or winning the nationals. And I don't know if I would have competed at a level high enough to qualify for the US Open. And qualifying for that US Open really opened the doors for my entire professional career leading up to this. And the world works in funny ways, and after that disappointment, I was able to kind of use it as a springboard to my entire professional career.
Well, you definitely did, but let's not gloss over the fact that you were the Jack Nicklaus Award winner and the Fred Haskins Award winner. Those are two college players of the year awards, and that's hard to do. That means you not only were on a dominant team, but you were a dominant player, and you parlayed that into the Low-Am title at the U.S. Open at Marion. You were 17th at that U.S. Open. That's a pretty good stretch. You played on the best team in the country for an entire year, although you didn't win nationals. You were two National Player of the Year awards that are in your hands, and then you go and you're the Low-Am at the U.S. Open. That had to be like you were on cloud nine.
Yeah. I that's it's funny. It's like when you're younger, golf feels almost a little bit easier than, I'm a better player now, but
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely feels a bit easier where it's just kind of a point and swing type thinking, and everything's kind of going your way, and the putts are just dropping, those key 8 foot par putts are always going in. And playing the US Open as a 19 or 20-year old at the time was obviously an amazing experience. um yeah, it's when you're just naive enough of all the different pressures, it can be a bit of an easier task sometimes.
Well, you won it on a golf course where my favorite player ever, Ben Hogan, won in 1950. I know you saw the photos of him around the clubhouse, but yeah, that's a great memory. Before we leave your college career, though, and move on to the professional, I want the best Max Homa story you got. You got anything about Max? He's truly one of the great characters in the game. Uh, Very inspiring to me. I've loved the way he's overcome a lot in his career. But you guys were teammates. Talk about Max.
Yeah, Max, he was super competitive. He was one of the leaders, or I would think that 12, 13 year, he was definitely the leader of the team. Um, I just remember he kind of took me under his wing. He was a junior, I was a freshman, and we practiced a lot together. We worked out together. One story that I remember fondly is we had this short game area to the side of the driving range that we went to, and we would do a 2-on-2 kind of short game up and down contest. If you got up and down, it was a point, and we played first to 12 or whatever, and we would do that constantly. And if the goal was to try and get to 12 points, and it was if someone won 12-11, we did win by two, so it didn't stop there. Anyway, we're doing that, and it was kind of getting later in the day. The first one, myself and my other teammate Joel Stalter, who was a really great player, we ended up winning the first one. And he's like, "All right, we're doing it again." So we're doing it, and each game about takes maybe 30, 40 minutes, but we were doing the win by twos, and it was going on so much. It was getting pretty dark late in the afternoon. And, you know, at if sunset was maybe 5 p.m., it was like 5:15, and we're still going, and we're and it was getting so dark that Max he had a kind of a black colored putter, and it was even harder for him to see. He had to like grip it down like way down just to see where his face was lined up. And all that. And I went up to him. I was like, "Hey, like, should we just call this as a tie?" And he's like, "No tie. I hate ties. I'd rather lose than tie." And we're going to see who wins. And I was like, "All right, we're going to the end." And I think we literally were out there like 45, 50 minutes after sunset. And um, and notably, we won again, which he was not happy about. But I just remember we were the last ones at that entire golf course and range, and he drove back pretty pissed. But that is a fond memory I have.
Well, thank you for that story. You've mentioned twice now that the competition factor of it, like that Coach Desimone always wanted you competing. And Chris Hack at Georgia has told me that his best teams would go out in pairs and they would play short game contests until dark. And I think there's some wisdom in that. It's like that's not hard to coach that. You got guys out trying to beat each other up. That had to be some bit of the success that you guys had was the fact you competed so hard against each other.
I think there's two things. I think, one, as you get better and better, just that block practice where you're just kind of banging golf balls gets less efficient as the better you get. And those competition reps, it's never going to feel as close as a high stress a tournament rep, but it's as close as you're going to get. And you know, as a professional now, I don't have teammates that I can always call or ready. They're the best practice partners you can ever have, and it's something that I wish I still had to this day. And as pros, I'm in San Diego, so I played with Charlie Hoffman the other day, but you know, and we are always looking for matches. But he's got family, he's got life, and I'm busy with some other stuff. And in college, you have, eight or nine or however many amazing practice partners that I wish I had to this day, which is in just the perfect situation to practice competitively.
I think as a coach, you're always looking for those guys that thrive off of competition, that would rather compete than hit practice balls, that would rather compete than play a video game. They want to be out there, or if they are playing a video game, they're trying to win. It's like the competition part of it cannot be overstated, I don't think. So great college career, great experience. And then your pro career has been a bit of a mixed bag, but had some incredible highs. Talk about how you got to the PGA Tour initially, and then we're going to talk about the John Deere Classic in 2018.
Yeah, like I said, after playing the U.S. Open, making the cut, I felt like I had a unique advantage of I was able to skip a couple of the Q school stages. Decided to give it a go. I made it to final stage. I didn't quite get my full Corn Ferry Tour card, but I felt like it was good enough to get some starts. And I decided to turn pro after the fall of my junior year. I spent basically 2 years on the Corn Ferry Tour. Got my card that second year, um, and then just kind of steadily kept my PGA Tour card the first and second year. The third year, which is when I won the John Deere Classic, I was actually struggling kind of throughout the entire year. I was missing some cuts, and I was trying to figure some things out with my coach. And I had a long time coach since I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I at the middle of the year, it's probably one of the toughest calls you have to make as an adult at that is calling who was really one of my best friends, James O, my swim coach, and said, I think I have to go in a different direction.
I remember James O. He was a great player.
Correct. And which is what part of what makes him a great coach too. But so I had I had missed five cuts straight heading into the John Deere. I had just changed coaches. to John Tillery, who was coaching, Kisner, Sepp Straka now. Um, and we started at Travelers, which was 2 or 3 weeks before the Deere, and it was I didn't play well that first time we got together. But the week before at the Greenbrier, I remember I was starting to feel a little bit better. I felt like I was driving it better and hitting it a little bit better. And then at the Deere, the stars aligned somehow. I I was always a good putter, but I putted incredible that week. Um, I just Yeah, somehow the stars aligned. I won by 8 shots, which is a stupidly big margin. I played I flew straight from the John Deere to the British Open at Carnoustie the week after, or the very week after. Um, and getting that win, giving you that job security for the next 2 years was also obviously really big. And I it was a whirlwind kind of week. I remember, to be honest, the the memories that stick with me the most are kind of the Friday nights and the Saturday night. I was John Deere is kind of later in the year that's kind of when you really start thinking about the 125, and I think I was sitting at like 160 or 170 at the time. So, I'm stressed about trying to keep my car. I'm stressed about the new swing changes, if it's going to hold up, through that back nine on Sunday. I just remember I only got like 3 or 4 hours of sleep on Friday night, Saturday night, waking up at 2:30 in the morning, even though my tea time's at like 11:30 or noon. And those hours in the hotel room are so long. The clock goes so slow. Those are the most prominent memories that I have for that week.
Yeah, you couldn't sleep. You wanted it so bad, and you needed it so badly. But you won by 8 shots that week, shot some incredibly low numbers, and so that's a dream you had since you were a little boy, winning on the PGA Tour. You got that. You've got job security for literally a little over 2 years, right? With winning it when you did. Uh, but like any other career, players are inevitably going to have some downtime, some tough times, some rough patches. Well, you really did from 2019 through 2021. You went through some really, really tough times and had to get uh, lost your PJ Tour card and had to get it going back through the Corn Ferry Tour. During those dark times, what did you ever question? Should I be doing this? And if so, how did you get through those tough times and make your way back?
Yeah, after I had won, and like we said about job security, I felt like that was the perfect time to really make improvements of my golf swing with the John Tillery, and we really felt like we could use this time to retool and take maybe one step back in the near future, but 2 or 3 steps forward after that. And those changes really didn't work the way we intended. We it was tough, when you're making such big changes and also trying to compete during those changes where you start seeing the ball do way different things than you're used to. You're too caught up in certain positions of the golf swing. You're not really playing golf. You're really just caught up in the swing aspect of it all. And also, my mental game, which I thought I had a good mental game, wasn't really. I didn't really have a set kind of process way to kind of think it through during the competition days, and really just went on a pretty deep spin for 2.5, 3 years, where it was tough. I was playing a tournament knowing that you have no chance to win, or you're just hoping to make a cut maybe, is a pretty rough spot to be in when you're a professional golfer, trying to play at that level. um, that was tough. I I didn't. I knew I wanted to keep going. I'd never thought about quitting at the time because I still had status. If I was maybe like playing the mini tours, then I really might have thought hard about it. But I knew what an opportunity each week can provide. The John Deere, I came off 5 missed cuts, so personally, I knew it could flip in a pretty short manner. So I never lost hope in that sense, and I just really wanted to just start playing some better golf. And I went after cutting ties with Coach John Tillery. Kind of ended up seeing a bunch of different coaches. Went and saw George Gankis for a while, and you know I went to see Butch Harmon for a couple of days, and nothing really ever stuck with me until ironically so my current coach now is Sean Foley, and Sean was one of the coaches, kind of, you're when you're looking through the Rolodex of coaches in your mind that you might want to work with. Sean was on the kind of the later end of that Rolodex, only because the coaches he had been working with, Hunter Mahan, Sean O'Hare, obviously Tiger, those swing kind of, I thought what might be his swing philosophy was a bit different than what I felt like I needed for my swing. But at that point, I felt like I was at rock bottom. I was like, whatever, we'll see what happens. And he kind of went in a completely different direction than what I had imagined. It lined up. It was like you said, I lost my tour car. I went down to Corn Ferry Tour for a year, and 3 months after I first seen Sean, I played the Panama tournament in Corn Ferry Tour, and I remember I finished like 15th or something like that, and I had hit the ball better that week than I had in since at least college days, and I remember calling after a top 15 saying, like, this is weird saying it after a top 15 on a Corn Ferry event, but I knew that was, I knew I had hit rock bottom and I was on the way up. And that's always a tournament that is going to stick with me as much as the John Deere, if not more.
So it was that time where you know that you had it turned in the other direction and you were headed back and you got your PGA Tour card back and you've had it for 2 years. I think, is that 2 or 3 years now?
This will be my third year after
Yeah.
coming
Mhm.
back. Yeah.
So tell me what your status is right now.
I finished 100 fourth or fifth, I think, in the FedEx Cup. Basically, if you're basically the top 50 is the real sweet spot of you get into every signature event, you get into probably most majors. You get to pick your schedule, and then basically from 60 to 125, everyone's in a very similar boat. You won't get into the signature events, but you have full access to all the other regular season tour events that you have. Um, so Sony, my upcoming schedule is going to be Sony, Amex, Farmers. So that is my status. Yeah.
Will you play the West Coast and then hopefully head over to the East Coast at that point?
Yeah. With the signature event model, if you play really well leading up to the signature event, I think they maybe pick like 3 or 4 spots to get into the next one, which would be the after Century. Pebble is the next one. So if I play really well at the Sony, Amex, and Torrey, I'll be able to play Pebble as well.
All right, and that's the plan. Going to play well. Tell me, before we head off to a couple other ideas I have here, I want to know what's the greatest lesson you learned out of that swing change, instructor change, and all of that. There's a lesson in there someplace. And by the way, I really respect Sean Foley. Love the way he approaches the game. It's great. But what's the best lesson you've learned out of that?
A few different things. I think one is I used to practice in a manner where it was a ton of swing videos. I would be on the range, I'd hit balls for a long time, take video after video, trying to make sure I got into the certain position that in theory should help me hit the ball better. But nowadays, I maybe take one video a month, and that's only to send it to Sean, just because he's not traveling every week. So just to kind of keep him updated to where my swing is at. I I'd like to think that I'm pretty knowledgeable about the golf swing and especially my swing, but you realize it's really hard to to know what your swing is actually doing, and it's kind of like an MRI where you should just kind of leave it to your doctors or whatnot, and you shouldn't take too much time into looking at all that yourself. And also, when we talked about block practice and competition practice, I really learned that just banging golf balls is really not the way to practice. It's competing against others. It's each putt or swing needs to have some type of consequence. Practicing, and if you're by yourself, making games here and there just to make each shot a bit more difficult, make you a bit more focused. Stuff like that are probably my two biggest components. So mostly of how to actually practice is a big deal. And any time that you feel like your mind is a little shut off and you're just kind of just going through the motions, that's kind of not the way to do it. At least if you're if you're like a Division I college player and you want to turn pro.
Think there's a time for block practice. I believe that. I know there is, but if that's the only practice you're doing, you're not going to get much better. And I try to get my players to listen to that. Every young player should listen to what you just said, because you can bypass a lot of heartache and pain and suffering by doing that. And you kind of clue into what makes you a great player anyway. And that is the competing, the playing, the adapting, the overcoming. All of those things mean a lot to becoming a great player. I remember when I coached Ricky Fowler at Oklahoma State, he would have lunch and he was going to hit a few balls, but he was looking for somebody to go play with. And I don't play much golf anymore, but Ricky's 2 years there, I played quite a bit of golf because he needed a playing partner. Everybody else was on the range. And I think he had it right. You play the game. We don't practice the game. So.
It actually becomes harder once you become a pro because you actually have more time to just focus, and you kind of um, you wake up, you breakfast, you might work out, whatever, and you just kind of go over to the golf course. You just naturally go to the range because you have so much time, and this is all you're mostly going to do for the day. You end up just spending a bit too much time just kind of doing this, kind of doing that. Whereas if you kind of have a set tee time with a friend, you're playing a match, it's a completely different mindset.
Yeah, until they put the John Deere Classic on a video game, and that's how you win it. You should be out on the golf course playing the game, right?
Correct.
Okay. What do you think about the PGA Tour University? The last 4 or 5 years, it's really opened the doors for young, great players coming straight from college golf. They didn't have it when you were coming through. What do you think about that?
I think it's fantastic. I'm jealous of the college kids at the RSM. I played with Luke Clanton and Mikkel Thorbjørnsen. These kids really. I used to think I was. I'm 31. I still feel really young, but these guys are just feel like kids, and we talked about that naive sense where you're just kind of looking and playing, and to have that straight pathway from if you're a really good college player and you get some type of status, even if it's not PGA Tour status, but straight to the Korn Ferry. I think it's one of the best changes the tour has done in recent years, and I only wish that it was a thing when I was playing, because it would have been fantastic.
Well, you would have been one of the top ranked players and you would have gotten that for sure. And one of my former players at Baylor, Johnny Kiefer, who just won the PGA Tour America's season long, and he's going to have a Korn Ferry card this year. Status is everything. And we were sitting at dinner after the final round of the NCAA championship, and he thought he was 26th on the list. And turns out he played well enough at nationals to get the 25th spot. And his whole life changed in that moment because now he had status. And when you turned pro, you didn't have status, so you had to go earn it. And it's like, this is the great pathway the PGA Tour has finally allowed the best college players a better pathway to the tour.
Yeah, it's in a way it's kind of the PGA Tour's version of the draft. You know, you're able to have some pathway. If you turn pro, it's not just play some mini tours and then Q school. You know, Q school is as great as it is. It's basically a series of a few tournaments at the end of the year that really make or break the year after and sets your entire year. And so if you have some minor injury or just have a rough stretch, it's such a daunting thing that where you have to wait till next year. And at the very least, the college kids that show a lot of promise has a bit of a different pathway, a bit of a quicker pathway to the PGA Tour and also Korn Ferry or the Americas Tour. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, the word status becomes pretty important. You've got to have something so you know you're playing every week. Who's your favorite players to play practice rounds with? I know you have to play some practice rounds with guys.
Yeah, Siwoo Kim's a really close friend of mine. We live nearby in Dallas. Obviously, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, who also played at Cal, was a couple years younger than me. Yeah, you end up just like playing, we're just like everyone else where we like playing with our friends and playing some matches here and there. When you have top level guys, we also kind of ask of like, hey, how'd you hit that shot there? Or what were your thoughts about this hole and that? And it's definitely a bit of a community feeling Monday to Wednesday anyway. Thursday starts, we're all competing, but it's definitely kind of fun to pick their brains about certain things.
One of my former players, Kyle Jones, who played here at Baylor, he won on the Korn Ferry a few years back, no longer playing, but he told me the biggest thing he learned in pro golf, and he learned it the hard way, was how to treat Monday through Wednesday. He thought you just practice all day long every day on Monday through Wednesday to get ready, and he learned very quickly that was not the plan.
Yeah. Luckily, I've been doing this will be my 15th year or 12th year as a 11th year as a pro, and now you kind of get into a routine of this is what I'm going to do Monday, is what I'm going to do Tuesday and Wednesday and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. Favorite course on the PGA Tour?
That would be I'm a West Coast kid, so I love all the West Coast tournaments. Torrey Pines is a just a bit of a nostalgia pick of, I grew up watching Tiger win all those tournaments there. Purely golf wise, if I could play Riviera or Pebble Beach every day of the year, that'd be totally happy.
It's not like you picked the local muni, did you?
Those correct.
Good
Correct.
When I used to recruit at the Junior World, I haven't been there in a few years, but if a kid could shoot 70, 71, or 72 at Torrey, I figured, yeah, I got the right kid. He's definitely got game. That golf course is brutal at times.
It is brutal. Actually, but kind of back to the 2011 class, Emiliano Grillo, who was obviously a stud and still is. Man, he hit the ball at a PGA Tour level since he was basically had a club in his hands. And I remember I played with him in like a practice round at Torrey Pines for the Junior World, and
I was there, by the way. I was there for that Junior World.
Yeah, and I think it was either right after. I'm pretty sure it was right after they had the U.S. Open in 2008, I think. Yep. And so they had kept the rough up, and he ended up winning, but he would hit shots that you're like, I can't hit that shot. I mean, I remember hitting like a 3-iron to the front left pin on 18 for his second shot, and he hits like 10 feet. I'm like, I have no chance at hitting that one.
You're hoping to hit the wedge that close, right?
Correct. He was a stud. Even as a 14 or 15-year-old.
I remember watching him at Karsten Creek at the Ping Invitational, and he dominated the field, just ran away with it, and he loved what he had seen that week. So he emailed me the next day and said, "Coach McGraw, I want to talk to you about coming to Oklahoma State. I love this week. It was great." And so I said, "Okay, that's great." I'm thinking this is falling into my lap, and I wasn't thinking very clearly because he had literally spent a year and a half in the United States. He had a swing instructor with him and maybe a sports psychologist or something, but he really wasn't going to school. And so he didn't really have a transcript. He wasn't going to go to college. The boy just played well as a professional.
I remember many college coaches just hoping they could get him. I remember he was really close with Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas at the time, and each of them were just trying to talk him into like, hey, like, come to Texas or come to Bama, and because he was that good as a kid.
Definitely was. So if you weren't a professional golfer, what sport would you be playing right now?
What sport? To be honest, I don't know if I'm athletic enough to play any other sport than golf. I I think I would have loved to be other than a sport. I think I would have loved to be like an ESPN Sports Center host. Just growing up watching all those Sports Center highlights. Yeah, I think that would have been maybe doing a separate podcast too.
No, you don't want to get this. Look at me. This is what podcasts do to you. Thank God I still have a coaching job. So, all right. So I really enjoyed this, but I want to know what your best advice for a 14-year-old who's a really good player aspiring to be where you are today. Just if you had some pieces of advice for a 14-year-old, what would it be?
I think, for me, tournament golf is so much more than just being able to hit some shots. I think it's being able to adjust to really, really different conditions. We play all over the world, and you don't get to experience that if you just play your home course every day. I think if you have the means, I think playing, when I was growing up, playing a full AJGA schedule, I can't tell you how beneficial that was. Or once I went to college, how beneficial it was to play in different different states, different grass styles, Bermuda, Poe, bent or windy conditions. Don't be too focused on the results. Compete, play as many play as many meaningful rounds as you can. And I think that's one advice I could give to any person, and it would help them out.
Excellent advice, really good. And again, that you didn't talk about block practice. The guy needs to go play and compete. It's really, really important. Well, Mikkel, thank you so much for joining me and sharing, your wisdom here on Better Than I Found It. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope a bunch of my listeners will now be Mikkel Kim fans that would watch you play and watch you compete. At least they'll know you a little bit better.
I appreciate you having me. I enjoyed, and as a college player growing up, you were obviously part of teams that I wanted to be a part of or beat, and full circle to talk to you on a podcast was a really cool moment for me.
Absolutely. Well, best of luck this year. We're looking for your results, Mikkel. Thanks.